Hey everyone, welcome back. Ever feel like you're just drowning in information when you're trying to make like a big decision? We're going to dive into something today that might be super helpful.
Yeah.
It's called the benefit flow engine. It's a framework from this Australian organization, DigitalDarwin. They're really into AI and business training, and they've got this fascinating way of analyzing any project plus. And they lay it all out in this document we're looking at. I mean, it's dense.
It's dense, but good.
Yes. Exactly. Good dense. So they've got this unique way of analyzing any project, whether it's, starting a company or even planning a vacation. I love that they use that example.
What I think is so interesting about this whole thing is this idea of flows. It's not just about like typical pros and cons, but like really visualizing how benefits are created, almost like you're mapping currents in the ocean.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. And also spotting those potential like storms or like sandbars that could be in your way.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. This is already different. Because a lot of planning tools are just about the what, like to-do lists and spreadsheets and all that. But this is really getting at the why behind your choices, right?
Yes, exactly.
And it's about understanding, like, for whom are we trying to create these benefits?
Absolutely. And what I think is really cool is DigitalDarwin really wants us to get the financial side of this. Like, what are the financial undercurrents that are driving these flows? And they argue that most of us, when we're thinking about projects, we really get stuck on those upfront costs of what they call CAPEX, capital expenditure.
Yeah, because that initial investment, it's intimidating.
Oh, it totally is. But the thing is, and this is where it gets interesting, it's the relationship between that CAPEX and then the ongoing costs, what they call OPEX, and then the revenue or benefit that you're generating, the RV. It's those three things together. That's what really determines if this is going to work or not.
Okay, so it's all three of those things.
It all interacts.
So you're saying it's not enough to be like, oh, it's going to cost me this much up front.
Nope.
I have to think about the ongoing costs.
Yep.
And then what I'm actually going to get out of it.
It's like a three-body problem in business.
A three-body problem. Okay, now you're just messing with me.
Maybe a little.
Yeah.
But it's true. It's complex. We can't look at these things separately. Think about like that home renovation project we were talking about before.
Okay, yeah. New kitchen, home theater in the basement.
Yes. Okay, so let's say you go all out and you get those top-of-the-line appliances.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a big chunk of your CAPEX right there. But now your electricity bills are going to be higher, right? That's your OPEX. So does that increase in like enjoyment because you have this awesome kitchen that's part of your RV? Does that actually offset those costs in a way that makes sense?
Okay, I see what you're saying. It's about the bigger picture. It's not enough to just be like, okay, granite countertops, this is how much it costs. I have to think about how that choice then impacts everything else for years down the line.
Exactly. And that's the real power of this whole benefit flow engine thing. It pushes us to think beyond these really simple ideas.
Yeah.
It helps us make much more informed decisions.
I like it. So we've got this engine, this benefit flow engine, but how do we actually know if it's working? Like, how do we use it?
Well, that's where DigitalDarwin gives us some really good tools. Talk about these three financial ratios. And they're like these quick tests that you can do for like any project or any idea.
Okay.
ROI, total CAPEX, and gross margin. Those are the three.
Okay, break those down for me because I think I'm pretty good with numbers. But as soon as you start throwing in like business jargon,
Oh, yeah.
I get a little bit lost.
I getcha. Okay, so the first one, ROI, it's really just like a simple way of looking at how much are you going to get back for every dollar you put in.
Right.
And they suggest you project this out to a certain time frame, maybe like 3 years out. You look at like, okay, I put in this much money total, that's your total cost. And then over those 3 years, this is what we expect to make. And you divide the revenue by the total cost.
Okay.
And that gives you your ROI.
So the higher the ROI, the better.
Generally, yes. A higher ROI is good. It means that the engine is like efficiently taking that investment and turning it into returns. But it's not the whole story, right? That's where this total CAPEX comes in. Remember how we were talking about that upfront investment?
Right.
That's what this is. It's just the sum of all of those initial costs that you have to put in to get the project up and running.
Right. So it's like the buy-in before you can actually start playing the game.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And different projects, they're going to have different buy-ins. And DigitalDarwin makes a really good point about this. They say a lot of investors, they'll have specific total CAPEX criteria. So they might say something like, okay, we only look at projects where the total CAPEX is at least $5 million.
Ah. So it's like a filter for them, basically. Before they even look at the potential returns, they're like, okay, well, does this even fit within our, like, what we're willing to invest?
Exactly. So it helps them quickly figure out if a project is a good fit or not. Okay, and then the third one, this is where it gets, I think, even more interesting. Gross margin. This one looks at how efficient your business is.
Okay, so if total CAPEX is the buy-in
Yes.
and ROI is how well you're doing at the game,
Mm-hmm.
is gross margin like making sure you're not losing all your money?
Yes,
Yeah.
are you making money while you're playing this game? So how you figure that out is you look at your revenue for like a certain period of time, let's say year 3 of your business. You take that revenue and then you divide it by your OPEX for that same period of time.
So you're basically seeing, okay, am I making way more money than I'm spending just to keep the lights on?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And generally, a gross margin above 2 is really good. Above 3, amazing. It means the engine is like humming along.
Yeah.
It's running smoothly, not sputtering.
You know, one of the things that I think sometimes makes me nervous about like looking at all of these financial numbers and ratios is it feels like it's assuming that everything is just a sure bet. Like we can tell the future,
Oh, yeah.
but it doesn't really work like that, right?
No, and this is something that I really appreciate about DigitalDarwin. They acknowledge that. They bring up this idea of uncertainty distribution.
Uncertainty distribution.
That sounds complicated. It's actually simpler than it sounds. It just means recognizing that not all projections are going to be equally reliable.
Yeah.
Some of them are going to be based on like solid data, but others, there's going to be a lot of unknowns. So they encourage us to think about these things in ranges.
Okay, so instead of saying this project is going to make us $1 million, I should be saying we're like 80% sure it's going to make somewhere between 800,000 and 1.2 million.
Yes, exactly. Because there's a range, right? It's about being honest about that range and acknowledging that there's uncertainty built in. And they actually even recommend building in like a buffer.
Yeah.
Like aim for what they call like a bankable business case. And that should have at least like a 10% contingency.
Okay, so this is making me feel a little bit better about these ratios because it's not about finding the magic number. It's more about understanding,
Yes.
okay, there's going to be some wiggle room here.
Exactly.
But how do we even start to build one of those bankable business cases? Like, where do we even begin?
Well, this is where their approach, it really, I think, makes the most sense. And it seems very straightforward. They call it a top-down, bottom-up approach.
Top down, bottom up. It sounds kind of like a business school magic trick or something.
It's not magic, I promise. It's really just about connecting that like big picture stuff with all the little details. So we start with that high level view, you know, the benefit flow engine, CAPEX and OPEX and REVI, all those big pieces.
Right.
But then we got to layer in the specifics. It's like each little choice you make is going to impact those bigger flows.
So it's kind of like with our kitchen renovation. Like, first we were thinking about the overall cost, how much it's going to cost to keep everything running, what we want to get out of it. But now we're talking about, okay, quartz countertops or marble.
Yes.
Do we splurge on the fancy appliances or go with something a little bit more budget friendly?
Right. And each of those decisions then impacts, you know, maybe that fancy oven you want, it costs more up front, that's your CAPEX, but it also might require like a whole new ventilation system.
Oh, right.
Which is going to increase your OPEX.
Gotcha.
So then it's like, okay, well, is that worth it to you?
Yeah.
How much do you value having that amazing oven?
Right. And that's part of understanding the RV.
Yes, exactly.
So it's like constantly going back and forth,
Yeah.
checking those smaller decisions against that bigger picture. Right.
You got it, and you keep refining your understanding as you add more details. So you get closer and closer to like what this thing is actually going to look like.
Okay.
But here's the thing. You don't stop there.
Okay.
We've gone top down, now we got to go bottom up.
All right. So what happens when we reverse it?
So remember all those little decisions we made. Now we're going to add all of that back up, and we're going to compare that to the initial assessment that we did. And I think you might be surprised by what we find when we do that, because sometimes those dream countertops, they blow the budget.
Right.
Or maybe we find some place where we can save some money. It's about getting real with ourselves about what's actually possible.
It's like that saying, the devil's in the details.
Yes. And DigitalDarwin really hits on that. They even ask, is it bankable? Because this whole framework, it's not about getting lost in the excitement of an idea. It's about saying, okay, is this actually going to work?
Yeah, because anybody can say, oh, wouldn't it be nice if?
Mm-hmm.
But this is about figuring out, okay, here's how we can actually make that happen.
Exactly.
I love that.
And it gives you that confidence to move forward, knowing that you haven't just thought about, you know, what you want to do, but why you want to do it, who it's for, and how much it's going to cost.
That's huge.
Yeah.
This has been fantastic.
It's a great framework.
Yeah, we've gone from like, oh my gosh, all these numbers and ratios to feeling like we have a system
You got this.
for actually like making decisions. So listeners, here's your homework. Think about something you've been wanting to do. Maybe you've been putting it off because it felt too big or too complicated. Now look at it through the lens of this benefit flow engine. What are those flows of benefits that you want to create? What are the costs, both upfront and ongoing? And then how do those things connect? See what you discover. You might be surprised.
Yeah.
And that's it for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.